chapter starts with the narrator explaining that the image of giants improved all over the world thanks to trading with other countries, giant marines' heroism, and Harold's diplomacy. In Elbaf, Loki was sent to the detention center in the underworld after destroying Brewer's village. So it turns out that Harold, being Emu's dog, has worked out for him. The image of giants are starting to improve in the world, which is what he ultimately wanted. And Loki being sent to the detention center here is because, you know, he destroyed Brewer's village, because that's the village that his biological mother Estrid comes from. And they straight up poisoned Ida. Ida is Hyrudin's mother, and in a way like Loki's adoptive mother at this point. They were like afraid that Ida was going to become the queen of Elbaf now that Estrid has died. And as for how they got Loki into the detention center here, I don't know. He's way more powerful than everyone in Elbaf besides Harold, so maybe he went there voluntarily. I don't know. Harold returned to Elbaf from his last mission and was taking care of Ida in her bar. Ida told Harold that his words made her feel better, and then she asked him if Elbaf will become one with the world soon. Harold said, "That's right, Ida, soon. We will be connected with the world. Then it'll be just like the old days. We can go on adventures together again." Ida reached out her arm and grasped Harold's hand, but as soon as their hands touched, Ida's arm lost its strength and she died. It was snowing heavily in Elbaf the day Ida died. Harold and Hyrudin were crying at Ida's bedside, while Loki sat in silence in jail. So yeah, as we've known, Ida died, unfortunately, from the ergot poisoning from the Brewer's village. And it's actually much sadder than I thought it was going to be, but it was expected, because as I've said before, if you are a mother in One Piece, you are essentially guaranteed to die. I'm surprised Big Mom lasted as long as she did. 14 years ago, Shanks disappeared just before he will be promoted to a God Knight. So Harold, the next one in line, was offered the chance instead. Harold accompanied the 5 elders to the empty throne room. So as we saw in the previous chapter, Shanks went to Mary Joie at some point after getting slashed by Blackbeard. I assume whatever Blackbeard had told him in their confrontation inspired him to go to Mary Joie. Maybe that was the point that he found out that he was a celestial dragon. If Roger didn't tell him before that, I mean, it still remains to be seen. Actually, this whole sequence is shrouded in mystery, because Shanks leaving right before he becomes a Holy Knight is very convenient, of course, because as we're going to find out, once you get upgraded from the first mark that Emu gives you, which is the Shallows Covenant, you're essentially screwed at that point. So either Shanks knew that, or he just, I don't know, realized that maybe he didn't want to go that deep because he was already undercover gathering information. And what he was looking for, we don't exactly know what. When he is talking to Scopper at Elbaf around this time, he says that there is something that he couldn't talk about in the Holy Land with Harold. So if he's back home, you know, where they're at right at that point, he'd like to meet him and discuss it before it's too late. As I've also said before, it probably has something to do with the One Piece itself and why Shanks ultimately winds up getting Nika fruit. Hey, also guys, can we try to get 3,000 likes on this video? All you gotta do is take your phone, hit the like button right there. It'll help the video, it'll help me. Thanks guys, I appreciate it. And also, if you could, please subscribe. We're almost at 300K, trying to get there before the end of the year. Thanks again, guys. But now that Harold is in the empty throne room with the Gorosei, he says, "Once Elbaf becomes a part of the world government, I'm planning to let go of my crown and give it to someone young and pure." And then Emu says, "That is something Mu will decide." Harold was shocked to see that there was someone sitting on the empty throne. Harold says, "Why is someone on the empty throne?" And Emu says, "Come forth, I have been watching thee, Harold." A huge scream resounded throughout the Pangaea castle. Emu changed Harold's mark to the Depths Covenant, the same mark that Killingham has in the present. Harold says, I can feel it. My power is increasing to an alarming level." Emu says, "From this moment forth, thou art a knight of immortality, a servant of Mu." Harold says, "Immortality? Still sounds like a dream to me." So as we speculated before, the mark that the Holy Knights have is like the upgraded version of what we saw Shanks and Harold having. I mean, it makes sense. It's the same thing, just with like horns coming out of the top of the cross. Because in the previous chapter, we found out that there's 3 levels to these markings that Emu can give you that makes you like the highest echelon of the world government. The Shallows Covenant, which makes you like a God Blade, which we saw Gunko originally was, along with Shanks and Harold. Then the Depths Covenant, the second level, which we assume belonged to the Holy Knights, which is true. And then the Abyssal Covenant is the third and last level, which I guess makes you a Gorosei. And we're also seeing for sure that it makes you stronger, because Harold was already incredibly powerful. And as for him getting immortality, I guess it just means that he has like that regeneration power. I don't think he stops aging the way that the Gorosei do. I think that's mainly reserved for the Abyssal Covenant level. Emu says, craft an abyss, a pentagram, in Elbaf for me, as a mark for the bond between us. And later, after the completion of Mu's final order, the fruition of thy hard work will be realized. Elbaf should be allowed to join the world government. So this explains why there was that abyss mark in the throne room that we saw. That's how Shamrock and Gunko arrived at Elbaf in the current time in the arc. But also it's really interesting that Emu is saying, after the completion of Mu's final order, the fruition of thy hard work will be realized. So for some reason, Emu needs Elbaf to complete their work. We still don't fully understand what Emu's true motive is. I mean, it seems like they are trying to make the world a better place in their own psychopathic way, but it has something to do with the giants, interestingly enough. While Emu said those words, we see Harold returning to Elbaf in his ship. Then Harold created the abyss mark in the throne room of the Rust Castle. However, Emu's next order for Harold was to turn Elbaf into a military nation with a fleet as great as the Marines. Harold tried to resist, but his body started moving on its own. The condition of the Depths Covenant was that he can never defy Emu's orders. So here's another thing we're finding out about becoming a Holy Knight or getting the Depths Covenant mark. You're compelled to obey Emu's orders. And Emu asking Harold to create a military nation out of Elbaf is directly conflicting with what he ultimately wanted. He was trying to make them into a peaceful nation. Harold ordered soldiers to tie him to a pillar and summon Jarl and his sons at once. Hyrutin was out at sea, so only Loki and Jarl were summoned to a Rust Castle. The giant guard says, Loki, come out, you're free. And Loki says, And the giant guard says, head to a Rust Castle immediately. The king demands your presence. And at Jarl's house, he says, emergency. You said, wait, what happened exactly? So it seems like we are getting to what we suspected. Harold is fighting back against Emu's orders. Well, not fully, but he's at least strong enough to order his men to tie him to a pillar. I suppose this prevents him from doing anything else. The chapter ends with a panel of the famous portrait of King Harold, the one where he held a sword while the narrator speaks. The narrator says, now, back to the main story. On that day, a mass slaughter occurred at the castle, leading to the most beloved king of Elbaf, the wise sovereign Harold, to lose his life. So now we're coming full circle back to the beginning of the flashback, 14 years ago, with Loki and Jarl entering the throne room. Because at the beginning of that flashback, we saw that Loki just arrived there and they were like, hey, Loki's returned. And we didn't know exactly what was going on. It's because he was imprisoned for destroying Brewer's village. When they come into the throne room, they see the soldiers stabbing Harold. So I guess he's straight up telling them like, hey, you guys are gonna have to stab me. I'm losing control. And I suppose sometime after this point, Harold is gonna get Dami reversied by Emu. And it's going to lead to Loki fighting him, because I don't think Jarl is strong enough to take him on. I mean, maybe Jarl can provide some assistance, but Loki is the only one that could stand up to Harold at this point, especially a Dami reversing Harold. And eventually Loki will kill Harold, I guess by, his request. As we talked about many times before, it's supposed to parallel to Rox telling Roger and Garp to kill him. Now, someone else is going to show up here as well through the Abyss Circle, I'm assuming. It's probably going to be a Holy Knight, maybe Shamrock, maybe Garling. And they're going to try to steal the legendary devil fruit, or the forbidden devil fruit of Elbaf. And I guess Loki is going to intervene at this point and then eat it himself. But in between this, there's going to be like a mass slaughter. Either Harold is going to start slaughtering a bunch of his soldiers, through the Dami Reversi, or Emu like straight up takes over Harold. And it's like Loki that fights Emu Harold. I mean, I don't know if Loki's strong enough to stop Emu Harold. And I guess that means that the next chapter may be the last of the flashback, because that's what this all was boiling down to. Hyrutin asking Loki to tell him what had happened that day. And I think he said, like, tell me in 3 minutes or something. So, we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, guys. If you liked it, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.